Good morning and welcome to webinar number 5 of CPE's 24-25 series focused on early post-secondary opportunities in Kentucky. My name is Robin Bear and I'm joined today by my CPE colleague Trinity Walsh. We're excited to host today's session on behalf of CPE's Student Access and Success Unit. Our webinars this year are all focused on Kentucky's big goal for more and more Kentuckians to earn a post-secondary degree or credential that leads them to a fulfilling career, to strong long-term earning potential and a better Kentucky all around. Here at CPE, we're convinced that opening up more opportunities for students to experience college and advanced coursework while they're still in high school can really change the trajectory of their futures. And we want to support the current and future workforce needs through this work as well. So in summary, that's what this webinar series is all about. We hear from experts and researchers and practitioners, all of the stakeholders in this ecosystem that we're in together, so that we can make sure that anyone who wants to pursue a post-secondary career, post-secondary education, and an in-demand career is able and well supported to make that dream a reality. Well, today's session continues a really popular conversation from December about preparing for Kentucky's future workforce needs through intentional post-secondary strategies and workforce planning. So we're joined today by two experts in the field. We're really excited to have Alisher Barikanoff, who is the Executive Director of Kentucky's Workforce Innovation Board, and Dr. Jana Weiss, who is a Provost Emerita from Eastern Kentucky University, and she also serves as CPE's Senior Fellow for Policy Development. And for today's conversation, she is also the director of Kentucky's Graduate Profile Academy. We're eager to hear from Alisher and Jana about Kentucky's emerging high-demand workforce needs and how K-12 and post-secondary educators are working together to ensure that our graduates can get a jump start on the essential skills that they need for those fulfilling and prosperous careers. So as always, we have the Q&A function enabled during our webinar today. Please feel free to submit any questions that you have for our panelists, and we'll get to as many of those as we can during the broadcast. But you all know we always have a lot to talk about, so time is really precious. If we don't have time for all the questions, we'll address them in the follow-up email after today's session that Trinity is so great about sending. So without further delay, I'd like to welcome Alisher Barikanoff, who is the Executive Director of Kentucky's Workforce Innovation Board, into the room. Hi, Alisher. So thankful that you were able to join us today. We really appreciate you being here.
Hey, thank you, Robin, for having me. I really appreciate this conversation and the interest in aligning education with workforce.
Yeah. So Alisher, tell us a little bit about your role there as the Executive Director of the KWIB, which is what we call the Kentucky Workforce Innovation Board. What is the KWIB and a little bit about your role?
Yeah, most definitely. Thank you, Robin, for that. So the Kentucky Workforce Innovation Board, KWIB for short, is the state's workforce development board. Every state has one of these entities. We all follow the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, WIOA's guidelines, but every state differs. So in Kentucky, we have 40 members, majority are businesses, but we also have organized labor. We have community organizations, we have educators, we have government professionals, we have elected officials, and together this board comes together to figure out what is going on, what are the trends in workforce development, what are the gaps, what are the challenges, and really puts in a strategic aspect as we look into the future. A very future-looking board, but knowing what's going on the ground is very helpful from all these diverse perspectives.
Wow. Alisher, we were just talking a few minutes ago about collaboration. It sounds like there's a lot of collaboration that goes on at the KWIB. And I think sometimes people who aren't involved in things like that don't even realize all the conversations and the work that's going on behind the scenes to try to get, Kentucky headed in the right direction. I know that you have been super involved with us. CPE is a dedicated partner. You're a member of the Commonwealth Education Continuum and very supportive of work that we do around dual credit and early post-secondary opportunities. I wanted you to talk a little bit about how the KWIB is really connected to the work of K-12 and post-secondary education and your role kind of in those systems.
Yeah. Uh, Thank you for that question. So we think, one of the vision for the workforce board and really the vision for Kentucky's workforce system is to make sure we create a workforce development system that is value driven for employers, aligning education with industry demands and preparing Kentuckians for the future. We think that education, post-secondary, K through 12, all that is in line with workforce development. The lines have to be blended. It cannot go one or the other. It's a together effort. And because of that, we really strive to provide various interests from businesses as far as what they want to do with work-based learning. They know businesses have told us count and count again that we need individuals prepared for our industry needs. We need individuals to be ready to go into the workforce. And the way they've learned to do that best is to engage with the education system. It's to blend the lines. It's to go into those schools ahead of time, expose students, whatever age that they are, to the needs of the industry. And at the same time, bring those students and learners, because we also serve adults, to the workforce and allow them to see hands-on experiences and have that relevant education, right? When you blend the two, that's when the magic happens. And we have programs like registered apprenticeship, which is the gold standard for a work-based learning model. But we also know that not every company is ready to do something like that. So that's where, tapping into internships, mentorships, or any other ship that is available to blend the two is the key thing. And I will mention for the career and technical education, one of the things that CTE does is to ensure that the certifications that students are getting is industry demanded. And that's where they utilize the work of the KWIB to ensure that business has demands for those certifications, and that translates over to those career pathways. And so from that angle, very much connected to the work. And I heard Dr. Fletcher, Commissioner Fletcher speak this week. He mentioned the relevancy, the need for relevant, vibrant learning. And we just see when industry's involved, students see the outcomes and see themselves in those roles. And I think most importantly, students that haven't had access or exposure to those careers, they can finally have an opportunity to envision themselves there. So that's what we're all about. We love to partner with the education system.
Yeah. I love all of those ships that you mentioned. I think that it's a great opportunity for students to be able to kind of give a test drive to a career or even a sector
Mhm.
before they commit to that fully, and invest a lot of time and effort into training. Sometimes it helps them know what they want to do, but equally important, sometimes it helps them know what they don't want to do. And so it's a really great opportunity early in their career, and in that process of training and certification or whatever they need to get them there. So we really appreciate all those partnerships with the Department of Education and in particular the Office of Career and Technical Education and all those pathways. So I heard you talk a lot about, these careers that are in demand. And so we're really excited for you to be here today to talk a little bit about the newest iteration of Kentucky's
Yep.
high demand workforce sector. So we're going to give you the opportunity for a big reveal with our audience today.
Yep.
And we'd love to hear you talk a little bit about what's changed and what's the same and what this means.
No, most definitely. So, the work of identifying the in-demand sectors is partly required by a Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, but partly it's also something each state ought to do to make sure that we align the supply with the demand that the economy has for us. And I think more importantly, we are able to have learners be able to see what's possible in their state. And so the Commonwealth took on the research to be able to see what is going on in the Commonwealth. What are those industry sectors that are truly growing? So over the year-long process, we took a two-phase approach. We utilized the KY Stats data and the Kentucky Center for Statistics. They're also within the Education and Labor Cabinet. And we utilized what we call the quantitative work group. The quantitative work group was able to really digest all the data that's coming out from KY Stats and occupation specific data to say what are those occupations that are seeing demand that are seeing growth and that are seeing wages that are of living standard. What are those occupations that we see the demand for them today, that we see the growth for them for tomorrow, and that we see the wages that, turn out to be something we could all live on? And so this quantitative work group consisted of business leaders. It consisted of industry associations. It consisted of government, education, all the stakeholders I mentioned earlier from the KWIB. It consisted of those individuals that were interested in the work and really coming out with that formula. And the formula came out to say, let's look at demand as 50% of the weight. Let's look at growth as 25% of the weight. And let's look at wages as another 25% of the weight. And so identifying that formula, we're able to identify the occupations that fell into that. And then those occupations were cross-referenced with the sectors. Now, this was a quantitative group, and the second phase of it was to bring the qualitative group together. The qualitative group involved education and training providers in the Commonwealth. So that would be CPE, that would be Kentucky Department of Education, KCTCS, KIA. It would be Education and Labor Cabinet. It would be the local workforce development boards who have on the ground work with the adult learners that are coming into the career centers. And it would also be the Kentucky Cabinet for Economic Development because they do training and they also see the future. And so we presented the data from the quantitative group, had the qualitative group really review it and finalize what those sectors are. Those sectors were delivered to the Kentucky Workforce Innovation Board in November and voted on and accepted. So now we do have the top 5 in-demand sectors, and I'd be glad to share them. I think some of them won't be a surprise to you all. Others may be a surprise. So these aren't in any particular order, but healthcare is one that it's going to continue to grow as people age and have more chronic illnesses. Healthcare just continues to just be supercharged with the needs. Manufacturing and logistics, we know Kentucky is a hub for manufacturing, and logistics is so connected to it because you got to bring in material, you got to export out of the state and out of the country the material. So that sector is actually slightly changed. It used to be just advanced manufacturing. Now it's connected. We have construction, the need for skilled trades is tremendous. The wages that are connected to skilled trades are also of high caliber. 2 new sectors that came up this time around are education and professional scientific and professional services. I'm sorry, professional scientific and technical services. I apologize for this slide. That needs to be technical services. So on the education side, we saw a much need for this industry, right? A lot of occupations connected to education are in high demand. Everything from your early childhood ed to secondary education to post-secondary education and instructors. So from both the quantitative and the qualitative side, it was pure data and pure analysis from personal experiences from all these folks to say this is a necessary sector. And as an education first administration, this aligns very well because this is something we need to help train the next generation of learners and workforce professionals. And then finally, the professional, scientific, and technical services. You see, I even made a mistake in creating this slide because it is a mouthful of a sector, but this sector is encompassing of all the various jobs of the future. These are your software developers. These are your management analysts. These are your computer user support specialists. They're your paralegals, and they're your research analysts. So these are the jobs that are just going to balloon as we advance in technology and as we advance in research, and they truly are jobs of the future. And the companies in this sector really highlight the professional roles, the scientific roles, and those technical roles. And I think what's very critical about these top 5 sectors, there are entryways into each of these through various education attainment level. You can have an entryway into these sectors without much education. You can have entryway into it with some education, some credentialing, bachelor's, master's, PhD, and beyond. And there's career laddering within each of those sectors that can help you jump from one place to another. If you're able to truly maintain that education attainment as you are working, you're only going to grow in those sectors. And I think this is important for us to share with the Commonwealth is because when we are engaging with learners, with workers, this is a way we can guide and say these are some opportunities. We know there's demand for the jobs in those sectors. We know there's growth in the jobs, and we know there's good wages associated with those jobs. So from those angles, these are good places to go. But by all means, pursue your passions. And if you end up in one of these sectors, that is even better. So there's the
Yeah.
background on that aspect.
Okay, so much that we could talk about here with these new sectors, but thank you for that big overview of what has been going on and how it was determined. You know, I love hearing you talk, Alisher, about this balance between following your passion, but also thinking realistically about what are these careers or what are these occupations that are going to pay a living wage? You know, it's not all about what you're passionate about, but it's also being realistic about what is out there and what will be out there in terms of the job market for students and young people who are choosing, or even adults who are choosing these careers for the first time. I want to end our conversation. We've got to rush through here and get to a conversation with Jana as well. But I want to end our conversation with one last question, and that's about soft skills. You know, we hear so much about the need for soft skills and kind of the the like that students are entering the workforce without some of these. And you know, there's a lot of reasons. People blame the pandemic and being socially isolated and all those kinds of things, but I'm just wondering, what are you hearing from employers and from industry leaders about these soft skills? What are the things that are most needed in terms of the non-technical skills that people bring to the job?
Well, I think we can't have a conversation with the business without this coming up, right? And they're referred to as soft skills, essential skills, durable skills, work-ready skills, and we've had some say tough skills, being able
Mm.
to show up at work at a specific time. Example is 7 a.m. on, while it's raining. That's a tough skill to do.
On a
And
Friday or a Monday.
exactly. And so these are these come up left and right. And I don't think there's quite the way to there's not a silver bullet to answering this question. And I'm glad all of us are collaborating on figuring out how we can equip individuals with these skills to be work ready, to be able to attain this. We from conversation and from experience, we see work-based learning as an avenue for that, right? It's the ability just to get out there
Oh
and
yeah.
experience it. My first job was selling popcorn and upselling popcorn, and I didn't even know it, but I was learning communication skills, sales skills, interpersonal skills, and those just kind of come with experience. And it's not the only way to do it, but what we found from businesses is when we get people in the field, get them to make mistakes, get them to learn from mentors, they pick up these skills. And so that's why I'm very glad for what everything CPE is doing to start as early as possible to get people ready for the workforce with these skills that we know employers are just saying this is the number one thing we need to have in everyone we hire. We can teach the technical skills, but the soft skills, they have to come with the people. So,
Yeah, yeah. I like that idea of we learn a lot of these through trial and error and
yeah.
experience and from those ships that you mentioned, those mentorships and other things that we get, kind of on the job. So, well, Alisher, thank you so much for this conversation, and thank you for teeing up the work that CPE is doing in this area. Because we're going to shift our conversation now to welcome Dr. Jana Weiss into the room and kind of continue what Alisher started with and her work with Kentucky's graduate profile. So, Jana, welcome. We appreciate you being here today. And we want to have you talk and kind of give a little introduction to the Kentucky graduate profile, just kind of big picture. If you would share with our listeners today, what is the Kentucky graduate profile?
Well, thank you, Robin. I really appreciate being here. It's really great to hear Alisher's introduction about what workforce needs. So the big question for the Kentucky graduate profile is a word that you used earlier, and that's intentional, being intentional about what students need and what workforce expects. But I would define it as Kentucky's question of asking, what should a college graduate from Kentucky be able to know, do, and apply? And so that's where we are. We have really focused on these 10 essential skills. If you want to pull that slide up, we can talk a little bit more in detail about what intentionality means. So this is Kentucky's framework for quality. And the goal here is to ensure that every college graduate in Kentucky has a high quality, relevant, which Alisher mentioned, degrees for all Kentucky students. And it's CPE's commitment to work with each campus to ensure that these essential competencies are included in the curriculum, they're scaffolded, they're scaled, and sustainable. Those are 3 S's that we use. And this has become part of Kentucky's strategic goal for every campus in Kentucky. We have the 8 public institutions and 16 community colleges. So each institution will map its way into the CPE strategic agenda. That's usually what happens on a campus. And for under student success, quality has become a very, very important criteria. Not that we didn't have quality, but we're more intentional now about what quality means. And we call this the Kentucky Graduate Profile.
Okay. So Jana, tell us a little bit about where this idea came from for the Kentucky Graduate Profile. I hear you say that it's very prolific and kind of saturating the post-secondary environment, especially, but where did it come from? And especially, I've heard you speak of this promise that we've made to Kentucky students. So I'd like to hear you talk a little more about that.
I'll tie that promise in with, I think, what has happened in higher education really since about 2011, when the Department of Education said we need to graduate more students. And of course, Kentucky had a goal for that. And that we need, if we admit them, that we need to be sure that they're successful. And I go back to Tom Sugar, a former president of Complete College America. He said, access without success is an empty promise. And that when I heard that comment, it really gave me guidance as a business faculty member and also as a provost to say, well, are we keeping our promise to students? We admit them. Most institutions in Kentucky are open access. So getting them there is really important. And the completion agenda said, let's graduate them. If they get here, let's graduate them. So that caused institutions to do things like we reduce the number of credit hours required for a degree. We really started working on completion rates, on achievement goals, and Kentucky has been in the front runner for that. But some unintended consequences, I think, were that we just say, well, are we getting students in and graduating, but what are they really leaving with that will help them in the workforce, will help them with life? And so Dr. Aaron Thompson began saying, okay, well, what about quality? Melissa Bell said, what about quality? You know, are we intentional about quality? We know that students are getting it, but here's the word equity, I think. Are all students getting it? Not every student, although we wish they would have an internship or a co-op, because as Alisher said, that's really a great way into the workforce. But they may not all get it. In fact, it's really almost impossible to ensure that there's a place for every student. But every student takes the curriculum. Every student is required from the first year course to the capstone course to complete the requirements of the faculty and of the curriculum. And so that's where we've started. And it's been a great start. We have an academy team on every campus. You might want to show that next slide is what my part has been as a director, and I'm really privileged to do that. Well, let's go to this slide first. So we're talking about these skills. So Alisher mentioned about soft skills. You mentioned soft skills, and you know, that's what workforce usually calls them. You're hearing more now about human skills, the durable skills you mentioned, the professional skills. As a business professor teaching juniors and seniors in business, I always call them professional skills. This is what you've got to know and be able to do to be successful. But I think one thing we ought to recognize about these 10 essential skills is that they're transferable. It doesn't matter what major a student comes in. We know college students change their majors. Often they change them frequently, more than we can keep up with almost. But these are essential skills for any major, any degree requirement. And we can also say that Kentucky's 10 essential skills are aligned nationally. The slide shows three nationally known lists of essential skills. And one is, of course, AAC&U, probably the oldest with the LEAP standards and the learning outcomes. NACE is probably more familiar with career services and the kind of evaluations that college students have if they're taking co-op. And then the more recent on the national scene is the QA Commons, is essential employability qualities. And this was funded by Lumina, and they did a national research including businesses, educators, large, small entities. And these were 8 that they identified as being essential. And you might notice that one that we have that the two major ones do not have, and that's civic engagement. And that is becoming a very more important topic in Kentucky, certainly with student voice and what high school students are wanting. But we're also part of a national multi-state collaborative around civic engagement. And I'm really pleased to be able to say that of all the states that have entered this multi-state collaborative on civic engagement, that Kentucky is the only one that really has a statewide framework. And that statewide framework happens to be the Kentucky Graduate Profile. And I'll say one more about one skill, and that is communication. You know, most of these skills we evaluate whether a person can communicate or not. And if we want to Google the skill that is most listed on employment applications or employment jobs, it's communication, which has been my discipline all these years. So that's the 10 essential skills, and we're working diligently to make sure that every student has an opportunity to earn those through the curriculum and also extracurricular activities.
Wow, Jana, so much of what you've mentioned there, Alisher talked about with the, with what the workforce demands are. So you want to go ahead and talk a little bit about how prolific this is and how campuses are working on this project?
Yes. And it does just bring a lot of pleasure to say that we have a statewide framework. And many of the webinars and meetings that we attend where essential skills are mentioned, there's a lot of difference in how people approach it. And one way is 3 difficulties. They can't define which their essential skills are. Well, we've done that in Kentucky. They have one-off opportunities that are really good for some programs or some colleges, but they don't have it statewide. So CPE has said we want every public institution in Kentucky to be involved in this and to be working on the curriculum. And that's the Graduate Profile Academy. And I'm so privileged that I am allowed to work with all 24 institutions in Kentucky, the 8 four-year institutions that includes U of L and UK and the 6 regionals, and then of all the 16 community colleges. So we have a 4-member team at each institution. The chief academic officer identified these folks. We said we would like voices of influence. We would like champions. We would like team leaders or faculty leadership. And we have a good mix of the 24 institutions. We have a good mix, and it's not all faculty. I will say that the team leads are usually someone connected closely with the provost office because they see the big picture and they have some influence in changing things. But also we have first-year course teachers, we have career services, and we have people in the student success area.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know that I have seen a lot of people working together on this project, and so it's really nice to see the collaboration across the state. And I know that Dr. Thompson loves it when Kentucky is the first to be able to do something or have something. So this is really exciting news about what is actually happening in Kentucky.
He loves to brag, and we want to give him something to brag about.
So let's talk a little bit then about how this is sort of operationalized on a campus. I know that you have a slide that kind of shows the knowledge, skills, and ability. So let's talk about how campuses can take this knowledge and apply it.
Yes. So educators talk about KSAs, right? Knowledge, skills, and abilities. And that's well grounded in most educator. But so looking at any degree, and I just listed some on the left side. It might be business, it might be science, it could be any of those sectors that Alistair mentioned. It could be healthcare. So there's content. And that's where faculty come in. Faculty are great content experts. They set up the curriculum, they decide what courses to be taught first, second, third, and from the we say from the cornerstone to the capstone, the general education and all that. And then on the right side, the abilities, what technical skills are people in the workforce wanting. If it's healthcare, they need to be able to do those kinds of healthcare abilities. But right in the middle, I would say, and I've come to really believe this, that the 10 essential skills are essential skills, these human skills, they are the students' greatest unmet need, because somehow we think, well, they're just going to pick it up. They're going to pick up arriving on time. We hope they do. We want them to arrive on class on time, but sometimes that just doesn't transfer into the workforce. So we also know that research shows that students don't list these on the resumes, that resumes, 2 lines, where I got my degree, when I got it, and what it was in, and if I did well to put down my GPA perhaps. But we want students to be able to articulate to an employer. We read in an article last week that a graduate from Vermont, I believe, she'd had many, many interviews, and the interviewers asked questions she could not answer. And what that says to me is that employability skill, that sense of preparing for life beyond education, maybe just wasn't included in her program. Well, we want every student to see the relevance of their degree. We want them to see the intentionality of the program. We want them assessed. And we want them to know in what courses they're getting these skills, and that so they're prepared for work and for life, and that it means something to have a degree from Kentucky institution.
Jana, I love how you're talking. You mentioned, kind of like one-off training. If this is not like okay, let's show up for one day and we'll teach you all these 10 essential skills. And, as an educator, I know that you learn by practice, and sometimes, in different and application in different environments. And so I can see so much relevance to what you're saying. One of my favorite things about the graduate profile is how you all have worked to align it, not just with post-secondary and workforce needs, but also with K-12 education and kind of that transition from K-12 into post-secondary. So we'd love to hear you talk a little bit more. We've talked a little bit about how it connects going forward, but how does it connect kind of in the rearview mirror to where students have come from in K-12 in the transition space?
Absolutely. I may be as excited about this as any part. And so on a slide, we have a slide. Dr. Melissa Bell and I have been working with a small work group through the CEC, and this is K-12 work group, to say, okay, if students are in K-12 and they are developing these skills through the Portrait of a Learner, is there any alignment? Because we might be the first state in the nation to be able to align K-12 and post-secondary, to really have a P20. And, having been on a member of the Kentucky Board of Education years ago, that would have been a dream. Well, it still might be a dream, but I think it's a possible dream. So we have the 10 essential skills, and with our small work group through the CEC, the collaborative, we have been able to say, is there alignment? And truly, Robin, there is great alignment. When students graduate from high school in Kentucky, they should have a smooth transition into the first level of assessment of our 10 essential skills. So there it is. There are the 10 10 essential skills and how the portrait of a learner, each of those items align under each of the 10 essential skills. So you can see there's a lot of overlap.
Yeah, and Jenna, I know this is not really a comparison between this and the first or one of the early slides that you showed with the alignment to national skills, but I don't see any circles where there are missing connections. At least there's some connection for all of them, and so that's
right.
encouraging to me to
There,
see.
there were no empty spots there. Everyone had an opportunity, and there's overlap as well. So it's
Yeah.
really exciting. I am just elated to see the work that's being done both at K-12 and in higher ed, and how if we collaborate and continue collaborating, that we can raise the level of quality for every student in Kentucky.
Yeah, it's really exciting. I like the one, especially where you mentioned communications being such an important skill, and just to see communicator over and over on that alignment chart is really telling about how important it is for students to have those communication skills. Well, I want to end our conversation, Jana, about that Trinity and I work with early post-secondary opportunities. We work a lot with dual credit educators and coordinators. And so I'm just wondering, how do you see the Kentucky graduate profile connecting with or impacting the dual credit experiences that students in Kentucky will have?
Well, I think dual credit has become really critical to get students introduced to higher ed. I worked closely in developing our institution's dual credit program and making sure it's high quality. And I have now two granddaughters in high school who are taking dual credit. So it's really important conversation.
It's amazing how when you have a student who's actually involved in there, you can have worked in it for a long time, and that just kind of changes your perspective on it, right?
It
You say,
does.
oh, that's what people are talking about when they say this or
It
that
really
about
does.
it.
So I want to show this slide again because the dual credit faculty, the teachers, and we have excellent ones from high school who are teaching for students for college credit. So they're still teaching subject area, they're subject matter experts. But we want to be sure that they're incorporating these 10 essential skills so that these unmet needs, as I'm beginning to call them, the most serious unmet need possibly. We're concerned about all students' unmet needs, but particularly these. So I would just encourage them to work with the college faculty if they're the high school teachers. But it's really important because these dual credit courses, for the most part, are the first courses that students take in college. I mean, that's what they're designed to do, right? And there are large numbers of the students, especially at the community colleges. So I think working to make sure that the course that they teach, they know which of these 10 essential skills are to be incorporated. The curriculum should be aligned so they get that replication, as you mentioned. It's so important, that I might be introduced to a skill in one course, but it might be reviewed in another and mastered before I leave the institution. So the dual credit teachers have a wonderful opportunity, and I think an awesome responsibility, as all faculty do, to make sure that we're not just leaving it for just happens through osmosis some way that students pick these up, but they really are intentional and they're incorporated into the curriculum.
Yeah. I think that dual credit course, because you have a student who's enrolled in a high school and a college course simultaneously, it really is an opportunity to marry that portrait of a learner to the graduate profile. And, for those teachers to really support that transition space so that students are ready for the demands of college when they enroll.
Absolutely. It's a wonderful time in
Mhm.
higher education. It's a wonderful time. And I just feel privileged to still be a part and be able to continue things that I saw important years ago in teaching business students.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Jana, we thank you so much for being here today and just appreciate your wealth of knowledge and experience and your passion for this work because we can see it and hear it in your voice. We're really excited about the graduate profile and eager to see what happens to it in its next future iterations. Like what is coming up next. So I hate to do this, but we've got to draw our conversation to a close. It's time for us to turn things over to Trinity Walsh, who is going to do a quick data moment with us and talk a little bit about some things that are related to our conversation today that you might want to consider. Thanks again to Alisher and Jana.
Thanks, Robin. I'm happy to be back and connecting with what we have heard today with some recent data. So I'm going to share my screen with you all here. Okay. So just this past December, the Pritchard Committee released a working paper which gave us some real insights into what employers are seeing and their needs for their future employees. Based upon this, CPE released the following infographic on January 23rd. And we're going to dive a little bit into this data that informs this infographic. So from the Pritchard Committee report, I'm quoting here. To address these challenges, the Center for Best Practices and Innovation of the Pritchard Committee for Academic Excellence conducted the Meaningful Diploma Employer Survey in the summer of 2024. This research aimed to understand the crucial role Kentucky employers play in shaping future initiatives and policies to ensure high school diplomas meet the needs of Kentucky's business community. The survey gathered insights from over 600 Kentucky employers across more than 20 industries, examining their confidence in graduate preparedness, success factors, and willingness to partner with schools. Key focus areas included durable skills, work-based learning, and school business partnerships. The resulting report, the Meaningful Diploma Employer Survey Report 2024, provides an in-depth analysis of employers' perceptions regarding recent Kentucky high school graduates' preparedness, along with insights about workforce readiness programs and potential barriers to their implementation. These findings can help education leaders and policymakers strengthen the connection between K-12 education and the workforce needs. Also from the report, it says that Kentucky employers overwhelmingly identified durable skills as essential for post-high school success, with 78.5 placing very high emphasis on these competencies when assessing employment readiness. This strong emphasis on durable skills underlies employers' broader talent development concerns, with many noting that traditional academic success alone doesn't guarantee workplace readiness. When asked what K-12 education systems should emphasize beyond academics, employers strongly prioritize professionalism, work ethic, and durable skills. Additionally, employers highly value interpersonal skills and emotional intelligence as crucial competencies. These findings suggest the crucial need to integrate durable skills learning more effectively into students' core academic experiences. So what are these durable skills? And Jana has shown us some of what those skills look like through the work that CPE has done. And the Pritchard Committee identified them as the following. This hierarchy of skills suggests employers seek high school graduates who can communicate effectively, demonstrate strong character, think critically, and work well with others, while also maintaining the capacity to adapt and grow. The data indicates a clear preference for well-rounded individuals who possess both interpersonal and cognitive capabilities, with particular emphasis on foundational communication and character traits. So when considering how students are learning these durable skills, one early post-secondary opportunity is the ability for students to have real-world experiences through work-based learning opportunities, which we have talked about in previous webinars. So the Pritchard Committee says that over half of the employers highly value prior work-based learning and employment experiences. This highlights the importance of internships, part-time jobs, or other work-related programs for high school students. Overall, this data underscores a shift towards valuing practical work-based learning as a key component of high school education, signaling for a stronger partnership between schools and local businesses to provide these opportunities. As part of CPE's strategic agenda, we have the ambitious but realistic goal that 60% of Kentucky's population has a degree or credential by 2030. And according to the Pritchard Report, an overwhelming majority of respondents consider industry-recognized credentials valuable to some degree, with 42.6 rating them as very valuable, 22.4 as extremely valuable. Only a small portion view them as having limited value, with 7.6 considering them only slightly valuable and 3.5 as not valuable. This data suggests that the industry-recognized credentials are generally seen as important qualifications when evaluating candidates for job readiness. So we'd like for you to consider that as you continue to expand your early post-secondary opportunities within your schools and your districts. And finally, to do this great work, it will require partnerships between schools and community partners. And the data reveals a strong overall recognition of partnership value, with 60.8 of the respondents viewing K-12 partnerships as very or extremely valuable for workforce development, and an overwhelmingly 83.7% believing these partnerships are crucial for fostering future talent pipelines. If you're interested to read this report in more detail and see all of what it has to say, the link is here on the screen, but I will also have it linked in our EPSO toolkit next to our webinar replay. So if you would like to come back to this and check this out, it is available to you. If you have any questions about the information presented today, please feel free to reach out to our guests, Robin or me, and we are always happy to assist you to connect you to the information presented or to answer any questions that you might have regarding this. Lastly, continue to connect with us on social media, through the Data Center, and through the CPE newsletter. And finally, have a wonderful week. We're looking forward to talking to you again soon, and hopefully very soon we will see some more weather. So see you again in March. Thanks, and have a great day.